Welcome YouTube, it's Chobra, and I just wanted to make a quick video to talk about one of the games that happened at Masters Bangkok. You see, I was working on another video about some philosophical questions about Valorant, and that'll come with time. Don't worry about it, it's in the works. But as I was doing some research and looking around on what other people were saying about the most recent matches and whatnot, there was just one thing that bothered me about that Abyss game that happened in the grand finals between T1 and G2. Now, those of you who watched will remember, or if you watched any part of the tournament at all, that Abyss was the permaban for T1, and they shocked the world by pulling out a Reyna comp, out of all things. Now, because Reyna was such a shell shocker, everyone in the world ended up focusing on the Reyna, right? The live broadcast focused on the Reyna. I mean, I talked about the Reyna during the live broadcast as well when I was watch partying, and everyone even now is talking about, okay, the Reyna, why was the Reyna a good pick? Did it work? Okay, it was against the Chamber. And that's all true. None of it is wrong. But I do think that that does a little bit of disservice to T1 and especially Coach Autumn, because I think this comp was actually pretty darn well thought out. It wasn't just the Reyna countering the Chamber. It was, quite frankly, the entire team. So let's get into it. So let's start with the pistol round, because T1 goes all out right from the pistol. It's very clear that their game plan was that they needed to win as much as possible on the attack, and quite frankly, I was thinking that the same thing when I was watching it in the watch party. If they had gotten the 9-3, I think they win this. And if you look at the score line, probably. And they probably could have won it with this, quite frankly, if you took away a couple of mistakes, but that's neither here nor there. Eventually, they lose it, but the game plan, in my opinion, was quite sound. So let's jump into the pistol. Let's let it play out. They're going to use the stealth drone to move up. Okay, he's going to have to shoot it. Leaf doesn't want to use his headhunter. Very quick on that. Heads up for Leaf. And then he still has his headhunter. He's getting spammed through the wall so that he can't actually hold the aggressive angle. So he's holding a little bit clear in. And then the Leer comes out. He has to shoot the Leer, and he's out of there. All right, he rendezvous. He says, I don't want to deal with it. But what you might have missed right there at the end is right as the Leer is coming out. I'll bring up the volume here. Is you're going to hear the Prowler.
This is the real danger, man.
Yeah.
Right? So the Prowler was tagged, and then he rendezvous and he opens his eyes and he's like, oh, I'm in the middle of a warfield. There's salvos coming in. All right, so Leaf now has to get out. That's been smoked off, and the haunt goes on the back site, so no one can reliably hold back site. Buzz is already in the site, and at this point, G2, sure, they had the fault line to try to delay. Let's change the color here. They had the fault line to try to delay here. They have the aftershock and whatnot, but Buzz is already in. You can't hold the crossfire. You've been smoked off. The haunt prevents you from holding reliably on back site. The site is T1's. And this matters quite a bit because Buzz is actually holding quite close. Now, Jonah P does actually jump out through this angle, but he just kind of misses Buzz because he's holding close to the wall, so that's unfortunate. But the fact of the matter is T1, through all of this, is not only did they push away the Chamber, but they're able to plant Buzz deep into the site before anybody can get there. And then Buzz hits some nice shots. All right, so we're looking at round 3. Before it begins on round 2, in typical G2 fashion, they try to get aggressive. It doesn't work out, so they all jump off the map. Bada bing, bada boom, we're good to go. Round 3, it's the bonus round here coming in for T1. And do note that, I mean, it's a bonus, but they've all got rifles, right? So they can upgrade up. They didn't all overinvest and lose any weapons, obviously, because G2 gave up on their eco. And so you can fight this round. But right off the rip, what we're going to notice is that there's going to be a fake smoke that goes out to start to condition and prep for B. Meanwhile, the stealth drone goes out on the A site to start to pressure that chamber. Now, it gets taken out because of the aftershock. You have to back off. So now they use an early Prowler, and then they use another Leer and close haunt combo, and the Paranoia comes out again and takes out Jonah P because Buzz, once again, is all the way here deep right by the generator before anybody can get in position for G2. So, quite frankly, the only way G2 could have held this round is if they had 3 or more people already in the site, right? Because you're still going to try to pressure them with the rendezvous, but the rendezvous is just getting traded out. You miss out on that angle. The salvo on this side is covering, so there's no crossfire. So really the only reliable option is that there's more than 2 people in the back of site to hold on to it. Because otherwise, I mean, you've got a Paranoia coming in on this lane as well. Like, you just can't fight this. You can't block Buzz from getting in unless, like, you dump all your util immediately in main as well to combat them. So G2 will call a timeout, right? They want to talk things through, but of course their econ isn't great. And so if you look over, the good old G2 special, you've got the Stingers coming out, but there's no long-range weapons. Now T1 is quite well aware of this. They started the conditioning in the last round, so if you look at the mini-map, they are going to start to station themselves over by the B side. Once again, Sylvan's going to hold in mid. He's going to smoke that off, but he'll be able to get a little bit more information in mid as well. Play this out. So the smoke comes out, this time not a fake. Sylvan just going to go out to see if there's any aggressive pushes out in B. He'll be that kind of flank watcher, the lurker. And T1 will slowly start to creep up. They're going to go into their own smoke as a group. They'll take control of it. And now once again, salvos, leer, the smokes come out, and then you're good to go. You've cleared out. Once again, the idea is Buzz goes deep. He holds on to back sight because this composition doesn't have much to work with once the spike is planted, right? You actually have to overinvest to get into the site, so you're either holding onto back site or somehow you just have, you know, you win all your aim duels in the post plant, right? You don't have a lot of utility. Sure, you have the Tejo, but you need to fight your way to protect that spike until it goes off. And this one actually gets pretty dicey, and that should just go to show that B side just isn't as ideal, right? Holding the backside of A is much better, right? You can have kind of step-by-step angles that you can hold to trade off of each other, whereas B is much more open, and you're going to have to make sure that somebody is just absolutely winning their first duel at long range, because otherwise you're not able to really trade off that as easily. You've got a lot of high-lows that you need to watch out for, and so it's a little bit tougher. Thankfully, Sylvan, or thankfully for T1, Sylvan's able to clutch it up in the 1v2, and they go on a 4-round win streak. So round 5, this time G2 says, okay, we really got to fight this. We're going to have both the Euro and the Chamber over here. The Chamber's this time going to TP into the back of site so we can try holding on to it. And meanwhile, T1 sends a fake drone over to B this time. So really trying to say, hey, we're going to continue to switch it up. You never know. That forces Jogamo to have to TP back over to B. And this seems like a pretty good read from T1 as well. Once again, because they used the drone early, they have to use a close prowler. They don't spot anything, so T1 will choose to go for a little bit extra investment. Another prowler, another leer. The salvos come out. This time Jonah P tries to jump down to protect, but the leer plus the paranoia plus the second leer, that dude's never getting his sight back while he's on the site, and Buzz once again wins that duel. Like, this composition is more than just about the Chamber. It just so happens that it really denies the Chamber, which was such a big part of G2. So the reason I wanted to highlight this is because in most of the discourse right now is about the Reyna and the Chamber, right? Most of the discourse is about, oh, well, Reyna has leer, and that can push the Chamber off from close range. But if that was the end of the story, in theory, Fade should have been enough, right? I mean, you could have even run, let's say, Fade as the counter, and, well, not as an opponent, but you could have had Sova as like a triple initiator, or you could have had, let's say, the Astra, right, instead of the Reyna. And Fade could have still pushed them off. The Astra and Omen could have still controlled mid. Like, that all sounds pretty good. But the point of the matter was that if it's just one ability, if it's just the leer or just the one prowler, either a really good Chamber has now gotten accustomed to waiting until the last minute for the shot, or taking it out, right, with your headhunter or a pistol and then immediately swapping back, or having coverage where they can just shoot the leer or the prowler, and then you can still hold that angle. But the point that T1 wanted to make was, we have to make sure that Leaf just doesn't get to play Valorant. This Chamber just doesn't get to do anything, like whatsoever, in any circumstance, right? Unless you're just blindly trying to shoot through walls. If we can do that, if we can deny him every opportunity to stay on the site and fight us, then we get our jet deep into the site, and they're holding back site, and we start to just control the site, then we can fight our way out of it, because now we hold the angles. That was the point. It wasn't simply, hey, we kind of need to pressure this Chamber a little bit, because I think also just giving a lot of respect to Leaf and the teamwork that G2 has, you know they'll adjust to that. That'll only take 2 to 3 rounds to adjust. But the point of the matter is this early angle, okay, you've got, where's Tejo? You've got stealth drone. Generally speaking, right? This was kind of the default that they started with on the pistol. Stealth drone to push out this angle. It gets taken out. That's step 1. And then you've got, let's say, the prowler, but with the leer. Now, something I want to point out in that round is that when you're sending the leer with the prowler, they're actually not going to hear the prowler early on enough unless it locks onto you. Because what the Leer does, just like, you know, anything else that near sights, like the Prowler if it bites, or, you know, like the Paranoia, is that it deafens at the same time. So you're actually not going to get that audio cue nice and early. So what they did in that pistol round is they'll send the Leer, and even though Leaf shoots it, right as it activates, the Prowler's coming out, and he just instantly gets locked on, right? There's no further, obviously it was used close range as well, but I want to point out the deafen because it starts to matter. Because what happens after that is he now TPs out here, right? The Rendezvous lets him go out there, but then you've got the salvos coming in, and this matters as well because it's especially on an online environment, it's kind of a pseudo deafen. I don't know if T1 thought that through, but quite frankly, if they did, I think it's genius because there are a couple rounds where it works out. So now Leaf is just in chaos, and then the Paranoia comes out, and it deletes this entire lane. So when Buzz dashes in, nobody really knows. Like, Leaf probably hears it, but it's in the middle of all this chaos, and he might have gotten deafened if he had gotten hit by any of these abilities, or if he didn't shoot at the Leer. The salvos are going off all around him. And so Buzz can just get onto site kind of without giving away any information. And where we see this happen is actually in that round 3. So coming back to the round 3, watch what happens. The drone gets canceled by the Aftershock. Okay, so they have to start to use their util earlier. Prowler comes out. It gets taken out. You're getting wall spammed as well. This is something consistent so that when you know that someone's watching that angle, you make sure that they can't peek out. They can't take a more aggressive angle on you. So it denies Chamber any terms of or any type of proactivity. Then you're going to send the Prowler and the Leer at the same time, along with an updraft. So this is also like an evolution of both like old T1 and Paper X compositions, right? Whether it's the Reyna for the old Paper X compositions or the old Zoo comp that T1 kind of started off on Bind with all the different projectiles. So you've got a Haunt coming out up top. You've got a Prowler afterwards coming here. You've got a Leer coming in deep. Then you've got a Jet flying up on the box. Like, this is a lot to be looking at for one person. So he goes out. He gets salvoed. Jet has already dashed in. And during this, if you pay attention to the minimap, we'll play it down at slower speed here. Jonapi's trying to watch. He's got his fault line ready, and he gets salvoed. So after he gets salvoed, he wants to try to peek in for a crossfire, but he can't do it. So he has to reposition. There's salvos going off around him. And then there's obviously a deafen that doesn't allow him to peek first. On top of this, Buzz is just running in. So whether the salvo audio kind of deafening was part of T1's plan or not, it does help out in that Jonah P just can't possibly be prepared because he thought he'll be able to get a crossfire. But nobody really knew about that because in round 1, Leaf was the only one who could get that information, and he's been chased off into tower with a smoke in the way. So nobody really knew about the positions of this. And then afterwards, they continued to adjust whether it's going to be Prowler first, Drone first, Paranoia close, things like that. So was the Leer a good counter to the Chamber? Yes, but I think the only way they got this close to potentially winning this map, and quite frankly, I think had the possibility to, was because it was paired with things like the Prowler, and then the Paranoia, and then the Haunt. All of that combined, and the salvos, of course. Like, all of this going up against the Chamber is what allows them to completely deny him any access, and it breaks apart this core part of G2 being so dominant in that the whole point of playing Chamber is you can trust him to just take control of a site, right? Anchor down, he gets one kill, he's always good for one, and then we can retake. It denies that theory, and so that's what T1 was banking off of. Now, I want to give credit to G2. It initially looked like it's going to take them too long to catch on, but they catch on just enough that they can get just enough rounds, and then they're able to clutch things up on the attack. Now, you know, were there mistakes on both sides? Sure. But if they weren't able to catch on, I think any other team, it might have gotten even worse. Like, it might have been an absolute snowball where the game was over in the first half and you win the pistol and T1's good to go. But they make it where I believe it was 8-4 on the half. So now it really is still anybody's game because T1's composition, I mean, you had to fight your way out even on defense. So it wasn't the most ideal scenario. So I just wanted to make this quick video to talk about the fact that, you know, these pocket picks, these agent picks, sometimes it's not just, hey, we didn't know what else to do, let's slot them in, because they kind of counter one-to-one. It is much more about how do I make sure I get enough rounds? Because just the Reyna, just slotting it in without actually the layering or the practice or this certain combination probably would have been, you know, you might have still gotten, let's say, 3 or 4 rounds in the beginning, but it probably would have been much more one-sided as soon as G2 started to catch on and Leaf started to adjust. But this was much more about, we've got layers on layers on layers, and we might run out of our playbook at some point, but we are going to make sure that we only run out when we get enough rounds. Now, eventually T1 didn't win, but I do think they had the right idea in mind, and I hope we see more comps like this in the future, because quite frankly, that's the only way you're really going to have a solid 7-map pool, unless like you've been cruising through, you're undefeated for the whole year and you've just been able to cook on your own. So hopefully we see more teams try things like this, where you're targeting one other opponent or a certain map or a certain meta, whatever else it might be, because I think that's the best way to get around the map pool, but also it'll be fun to watch. So if you guys enjoyed that breakdown, of course, Pacific Stage 1 is starting off soon. Every Stage 1 is starting off soon. China's already started, so that means watch parties will be going on once again. So if you want to know more about the schedule and whatnot, make sure you're joining the Discord down below, but also make sure you're subscribed to this channel and following on Twitch to catch the live streams for those watch parties. And I hope I see you guys in chat. That's going to be it for this one. I hope everyone has a good one, and I'll see you next time.